that sound could only mean one thing. For BTS Live, Behind the Scenes Live. We actually have a title now. And I couldn't wait for Mark to get back to me, so I just reserved the domains anyways.
Oh, you didn't even wait for me to approve the title.
Absolutely.
Wow, and I thought I had some type of authority in this deal.
Nah, I don't know. It's funny because I knew Behind the Scenes would be tough to get because it's such a BTS. See, doesn't that sound good? That's a hashtag. Everything.
BTS.
So yeah, BTS.
Zane, I told Marty last night before he reserved this, when he threw a couple names at me, that if we're going to go with the long name, then it's gonna turn into a catchy short acronym. BTS.
Absolutely. Now, of course, I've got to get my first title up here. Stand by. Anyways, we are going to talk all about pre-production, and we're going to. Even though we talk about video production in the general sense, we're going to really kind of, make it more related to live, because that's the toughest thing. I mean, Mark, you do plenty of live shows, you do plenty of pre-production shows, or produced shows and edited shows, and those have their own challenges, especially in the pre-production phase, to make them look nice and pacing and all that stuff. But live is a whole nother kettle of fish. Really. And it's all, and to me, a lot of it is about the preparation that nobody sees, and we both have worked in television. You still do. And that we have plan A, B, C, all the way through Z. And you've been there. You've been in those meetings. 99.9% of the time, we don't use any of those plans, especially in sports television, but you have to make them. And that's what makes you look good on air, right? So what we're going to do, and we're going to do every week, is combine. You need both the behind the camera skills and knowledge, and in front of the camera, how to present yourself. So Mark is an expert, and he won't like me saying that, but I think he is. On camera, he's done it professionally in a couple different markets, right? As a sports anchor. Currently working at ESPN in that management role in production. I left ESPN about a year and a half ago, and my forte is more behind the camera. Right now, I do it for a business. I produce live streaming shows and do pre-produced and produced video. So we figure we'll combine the two. So anyways, I don't know who wants to start. See, we rehearse these very carefully, right, Mark?
Well, yes. I'm all about rehearsal. You know that.
Absolutely.
You just say it off the top of my head. That works best for me. So I'm going to have difficulty guiding some people through the process of writing a script and taking it through. Even though I love to write and I believe in writing, I tend to shoot from the hip. The one thing that you said there, Marty, that I think applies to just about everything we're going to hopefully coach and teach and instruct, and applies to a lot of things in business and life, is to have a plan, have a structure, have a process in place, knowing full well that you're not going to get from A through Z perfectly, and it's not going to go as scripted, but at least have the script, know that maybe A and B go as scripted, then all of a sudden you need to be able to fly by the seat of your pants and make something up for C. But understand that in the structure that you build, it would be best to build a structure that is flexible and that you can adapt to and change and adjust on the fly.
Couldn't say it better myself, especially with live. And again, we both had experience with that. We've been in live control rooms, especially during news style programming where you have breaking news. And the same applies when you're doing shows on Blab or Google Hangouts or YouTube Live. These will apply, and these tips will apply to anything, any live video that you want to do.
It's great, Marty, because just a few hours ago, I was on Facebook and connected with a guy who I worked with in my first job in Ashland, Ohio, when I was a news anchor and reporter. I'll tell the story someday about how my interview went and why it was ironic that I actually got the job. But he posted a picture of himself in front of the production truck, and it just brought back so many memories. And one of the things that you touched upon that came readily to mind was election night. Now, you talk about flying by the seat of your pants and getting in results and things changing and trying to get the accurate results. And for me, in a small operation at the time, running out with camera, with tripod, mic, the whole deal, and having to be the ENG on the scene election night at the headquarters, and then gathering all that video, heading back to the station, editing sound bites and gathering results, and then doing a completely unscripted hour to hour and a half with just being able to present election night and how it transpired, just with basically results. And the rest of it was completely unscripted, just results and knowing when to pitch the sound bites and having, you talk about planning for chaos, but planning in a structured way where the director and the tape guy knew which tapes and which sound bites to play just based on.
Oh, you got knocked off again. So we will, Mark, if you just refresh and come back in. There we go. Okay. And you were saying?
I was just basically saying, wherever I was.
Oh, now your mic's not working.
Just in regards to having.
So you want to check your mic settings?
Yes, I will.
Okay. And you were saying before we got knocked off the air, I think you were finishing up a story.
Well, appropriately enough, I was talking about being able to broadcast on the fly, and I was giving election night as an example of the first 3 years I was in television. I was a news anchor reporter at a small station, so I would, on election night, run out onto the scene, camera in hand, mic, all the equipment back in videotape times, VHS, and beta, and run back and have a structured process in place for the director and the tape guys that they could understand in what order I would be pitching to different tapes with a completely unscripted election night. So nothing was scripted. I was just basically working with results that were coming in blind and being able to pitch the sound bites that I had previously recorded in the field. So it just goes back to having a process and a structure in place, but being very adaptable to that structure and being able to go with it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's very, very well said. Have a plan, but have enough flexibility built in where you can react on the fly. And you're talking about a breaking news situation, and we both have had experiences in sports news and any kind of news situation. I mean, you never know. And that it really kind of applies to all live, but you never know. Like we have in the technical problems here, you never know what's going to happen. So the more prepared you are, and know what to do in case something like that happens, and have a backup plan. So for this particular show, we're both hosts. So if Mark got knocked out, I can still continue the show. Before we began the show, I made Mark a host, and that's kind of the neat thing about Blab. So if I had problems getting in, Mark could start the show. So things like that. So I'm just going to get into tips. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through some basic tips for pre-production on the production side of behind the camera, and then Mark's going to cover some tips for on-camera preparation before your production. And then after that, we'd be happy to take any questions for the remainder of the show that you might want to post in the question box. And how you do that is you type /Q space, and then you text your question, and what will happen is it'll show up on the left hand along with in the comments. It'll also show up on the left hand side, and we'll see that, and we can bring it on screen and can answer your questions. So let's get into the first of my production tips, and that is and this applies to Blab, it applies to Google Hangouts, any live streaming that you might want to do. First thing you need to do is restart everything. And what I mean by everything is your computer that you're going to use, your router, and your modem. And the reason for that is, and I'll start with the router and modem. The modem, because your cable company or your internet service provider will frequently send updates down the line. They might increase the speed. And the only way you're going to be able to take advantage of that is to refresh your modem. And also, just like a computer, refreshing the modem kind of gives it a fresh start, and anything buggy that happens with it, usually a restart will help and will get you back on track. And it's just a good habit to get into before you start your show, because again, live video streaming is very resource intensive. You're going to use a lot of bandwidth, so you want to make sure everything's working properly. Same thing with your router. You want to restart that's a mini computer. So just like you get benefits from restarting your computer, you want to restart your modem, start fresh, and you're ready to go. You want all green lights, and you're set to go. Then your computer. Again, you want to restart that. If you're like me and like a lot of people, you probably have 804 browser windows open and multiple apps and all that. And you want to restart that. You want as many of the computer resources available to you to do your live streaming as possible. And I see a lot of people on Blab and live streaming that just hop on and then they wonder why they have issues because they're running 800 windows and it's all competing for the resources. So that's the first thing. So restart everything. The second thing I would say is, and I'm going to type this in as I go. Close all browsers and apps. All right, close all your browser windows and apps that you're not using. Obviously, you're going to leave the browser open that you're using for Blab or for Google Hangouts, but everything else should get shut down. You shouldn't be running your email in the background. You shouldn't be running Dropbox, especially those syncing programs, because they're going to take resources away. If you have a backup program, I use Backblaze. If you use Carbonite or any of those background syncing programs that back up your computer's hard drive, you want to shut those down. Anything that's going to take away from the resources and RAM that you have in your computer. Streaming audio and video take a lot of resources on the computer side because of the encoding. And that's another reason why if you go on Blab, you'll see people get knocked out, or you'll see people, especially with buffering video or stuttering, that could be a bandwidth issue, but it also could be a computer resource issue. And if you shut down as much as you can, you're going to have much less competing for your computer resources. And Zane says the new Google Photos backup turns itself back on each time you reboot, just like Dropbox does. That's an excellent point. So if you're worried about you forgetting to turn it back on, a lot of these services will turn themselves back on once you reboot. And that's another thing is when you reboot your computer, I guess you got to go in there and turn them off before you go streaming, so you don't want that to competing. But again, make sure that you remember to turn it back on, or just after your stream, you can reboot. So that's my second tip. My third tip is you want to use wired internet. And I know a lot of people use Wi-Fi. It's all over the place. So use wired internet. I'm just checking my spelling here. And the reason for that is you might be in the same room as your modem and as your router. And in fact, my router is literally 3 feet away from me right now. But I am on wired internet, and there's a good reason for that. Wireless is prone to interference. And that's another reason why you'll see on Blab, on Google Hangouts, some people have trouble and interference and stuttering and buffering. Again, it could be a computer resource issue, but it could be an interference issue with their internet. Now, they might have tremendous internet, 100 megabytes or up and down, and plenty of bandwidth. It doesn't take that much bandwidth to run these videos, but they're still having issues, and that's because they're having interference on their wireless. Anything can cause it. So if you're wired, you're not going to have that. Primary reason why you're experiencing issues and why you don't experience issues when you're doing anything else on your computer. So say you're doing email, it doesn't take a lot to get your email downloaded. It doesn't even have to download in the proper order. Internet works on these packets that download. And when you download like an email or a web page, the pieces of that page might download in a different order. And then what your computer will do is reassemble that and display it for you. Now, if you're looking at a static web page, it doesn't really matter what order that comes down. It's going to reassemble and you're going to see it. Streaming video, on the other hand, or streaming audio, it matters. Everything, it has to come down in order. It matters tremendously. You You have to have everything in order. And if it doesn't come down in order, that's when you get the buffering. That's when it stops, freezes, because it's waiting for the other information to assemble before it displays the video or the audio. Wired connection eliminates that because you have that direct connection with your router. So that's very, very important. If you can, it will solve a lot of issues. The next tip is technical rehearsal. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't even bother with or don't even know about. Make sure I got the spell right. Technical rehearsal. And what do I mean by that? Well, live streaming is positioned as something that's very simple to use. You just press one button. Periscope, especially. It's on your phone. You press one button, you're on the air. And I hear a lot of people talking about that. And in theory, that's true. And same thing with Blab. You press one button, you call in, you're ready to go, right? But how many times have you seen people with problems getting on the air? And I'm just going to read this comment from Eileen. These two are good for this stuff. I am soaking. Thank you, Eileen. I appreciate that. So do a technical rehearsal. And especially if you're doing an interview, I see how many times I see people that do these interview shows on Blab, on Google Hangouts, and it's like 9 times out of 10, you see they can't connect. And everyone's baffled why nobody can connect. And that's usually because there's something technically wrong, something's not tested, something's not working properly. So if you take the time to test that ahead of time, I'm talking not the same day, I'm talking if you schedule in advance, a couple days ahead. So if you do have issues, you can work those issues out. And if you don't know how to do it, you can seek to help you. And also you can make sure the person that you're interviewing, not everyone is familiar with live streaming or Blab or Google Hangouts. And you can, as the person that knows, can walk them through that. I do this professionally with clients, and one of my primary workflows is always to get on the stream with a client, with a guest that may be doing it for the first time. Make sure we go through everything, make sure they're comfortable with their setup, coach them on their setup as far as lighting and camera and audio and all that stuff, but test ahead of time. That way it's going to work. And again, so many times I see people that don't do that, and it doesn't really take that much. And this is especially important, again, with your guests. The fifth thing I would say is test everything in advance. And what do I mean by that? I'm just going to put it up here. Test everything. And this is beyond what you do in the pre-production test, the technical test. This is day of testing. And what I do is at least an hour before I start to begin the preparation for my show. So this show here, I started preparing for this an hour before we got on. So what I did in the case of Blab, what I do is I go on another page. I start a test Blab. I just name it test. I put it in the test zone. There's a tag for that. And I start it now, and I don't notify anybody that I'm doing it. And I just test my connections, and I know with Chrome, you want to make sure that you're on the right camera. If you're using multiple cameras, you're on the right mic. Everything's working. Get on another camera, get on another device, get on another computer. Make sure that video's coming through. Make sure your audio's coming through. And then once you have that set, your browser should be set and you're ready to go. But do that. I would do that about an hour before, 30 minutes before. That way, everything's working the day of. And the last thing I want to point out is when you do start your show early. And what do I mean by that? I mean, start it about 10 to 15 minutes early. And the reason for that is, and I did the same thing with this show here. I started about 10 minutes early. And especially if you have a guest. Now, Mark, I'm pretty confident knows how to get in to the Blab. And in fact, I made him a co-host, so that was not an issue. And I know he was nervous about starting it before I got on, But we do that in case I have a problem or in case Mark has a problem. Either one of us can start the show. But we also come on to make sure everything's working. And in Blab, obviously everything's in public, so you kind of do a little pre-show. But that way, everything's working. This is especially important if you're doing an interview, especially if it's something professional or for business, and you're doing it with someone that may be new to the platform or may not be new, but you're not sure if they're going to get on. Do it early. You make sure everyone gets on, ready to go. And that way, if you have issues, you have a little buffer time to figure those out. And then as people come in for the actual show at the top of the hour, bottom of the hour, you're ready to go. You're set to go. And again, all these things I've mentioned, I see countless times people don't follow it. And again, I think they're kind of seduced by the simplicity of the platform, but they don't do all the prep work that's necessary to make sure they have a smooth show technically. So those are my 5 or 6 tips to a smooth show. I'm just reading the comments, make sure I'm not losing anything here. Co-host, yes, I agree, Eileen. The co-host feature is excellent, and it makes for very smooth time, and you can play off each other, which is great. I'm going to toss over to Mark, and I'm going to try to keep up with his comments here, and I'm going to try to put it up in the window there. But Mark, I know you have some tips, pre-production tips, especially on camera.
So the whole idea of our show here is coaching and instructing from behind the camera and also in front of the camera, because most of us in this day and age and in this platform that is amazing, we're so used to the internet, but just think we can broadcast to the world and we can have a platform, any of us. So before you get started, and I'll move my mic out of the way, which is suddenly dying on me, not working. So we'll move the mic out of the way. And I think any content creator, before you just jump on, start talking, and start rambling, needs to kind of kick back, self-assess. Who are you? What do you want to convey? How serious is your topic? Who are you as a person? What do you think is unique about you? What do you have to bring to the table? What do you want your message to be? What do you want your brand to resonate with people? Are we dealing with technical information? Are we dealing with weighty subjects and issues? Are we dealing with light, fluffy stuff? Do you want it to be fun? Do you want it to be a little bit of both? How much is this going to be personality driven? So I think you really need to take a self-assessment of who you are and what you want to convey and what you want to communicate. I think that is paramount to building a brand and conveying content that is clear, that's concise, that's interesting, that's engaging, that's entertaining if you want it to be. And in this day and age, even if it's very technical, very informationally based, scientific, it still needs to have a level of entertainment to it, or people are not going to consume it. So self-assess. Number 2, your subject. Okay. Most people are drawn to people that are passionate. So let's understand that what comes out of my mouth, the words that come out of my mouth, is a small percentage of what people are going to take in regards to communication. They're going to take in a combination of my body language, of my energy, of my passion, of the nonverbal signs that I give and the nonverbal communication, in addition to just the words, the transcript that comes out of my mouth. So are you choosing a subject that's based in what you think is going to make money, or for some other reason than the right reason? The right reason needs to be something that you feel passionate about, something you love, something that at least you're interested in. Now, connecting that to another important aspect is usually people that are passionate about something usually have some knowledge base in that, because they're so passionate, they love it, they're immersed in it, they read it, they consume it, they watch it, they're involved in it, active in it, regardless of whether they get paid or are doing it formally. So usually there's a knowledge connection to your passion. And so that's very important too. The other aspect to that would be marketability. Are you choosing something, a topic, a subject that's marketable? Now, I don't think that this typically comes up, that this is an issue, because most things have a niche somewhere. Even though that niche may seem like it's about 0.00001% of the population, there is a niche of people out there that are passionate about the same thing that you are passionate about, and you just need to find them and connect with them. And in some respects, and Marty and I talk about this all the time, In some respects, it's better to have a smaller niche and really connect with those people and really develop yourself as a thought leader in that specific niche rather than politics. I'm going to talk about politics. That's fine if you want to do that. There's obviously zillions of people out there talking about politics. So if you really have a small interest or a large interest in a small topic, something that you don't feel is that popular, don't be discouraged by that. I'm just about going to guarantee you that if you love something, that there are plenty of people out there that love it just as much as you do. Okay, next we want to talk about the title of your show. You can go basically two different ways here. So the internet is search driven. So you want your show title to convey and explain what you're doing. So for example, right here we have behind the scenes, pre-production tips, in front of and behind the camera. Very explanatory. You don't need to be that wordy. We've sized it down to BTS, and we would love for that to catch on. That's part of this as well. So we've got a long introductory title name, but we've shortened it down to BTS, and hopefully that's effective. So you want your show title to explain your content, your communication using keywords, and keywords early in the title. So you don't want the keywords to be backloaded in the title because they're not going to be picked up as readily in search engines as they would be if they're at the top of the article or of the title in this case. Or you can go the complete opposite direction. If you believe you've got a catchy title, Google, Amazon, we know 100 examples of titles that have caught on. And they've caught on and they've become legendary, iconic brands. That's kind of the risky approach to this, but it could work. It could work. I would suggest you go with a more formulaic, using key phrases, keywords to explain your content and the thrust of your show. Okay, thirdly, we'd like to look at the length of your content. So we're kind of generically throwing around the phrase show, whether it's going to be a segment, whether it's going to be a full-blown show, a podcast, whatever it is, you really need to think about an effective length and do some research about what you're conveying and the effective length. It's sometimes thought that, hey, if I do an hour on this and people just want to listen to the first 5 minutes, hey, that's okay because they can always shut it off and I still get a click counted toward my content. But you may have some really good things to say in minute 44. And if you're not a well-structured speaker and if your presentation hasn't been ordered in such a way, that's lost, that's gone, because about 3% of your audience is going to hear what you said in minute 44 that you really should have said in minute 2. So really think about the length of this. I think a lot of people, especially, you know, the old saying is that a little bit of knowledge is dangerous, that people who have some production background or content background, but maybe not enough, they fall in love with what they produce. They fall in love with whether they're producing graphics, they fall in love with music beds, they fall in love with their own voice, they fall in love with just rambling about a topic. And you have to understand that your audience may not be quite as enthusiastic, and you need to be very concise. There are millions of sites and content creators who are battling you for time. So there are a zillion choices out there. You, like me, probably go on YouTube, for example, and see the litany of titles off to the right-hand side, even if you've niched it down to exactly what you want to see. And it's difficult for me to make a choice because I want to see everything. And a lot of these videos are 40, 45 minutes. And I would love it if I had endless time to just sit and watch and consume. But even if I'm looking at my favorite music, for example, it is so difficult for me to make decisions that you are vying for the time and attention of so many people. And we've got so many other subjects that we're going to deal with in future weeks about keeping people's attention and keeping their interest. But we're just talking about taking the approach before you actually produce the content. So the length of the video or the audio content is crucial. You want to be concise. You want to present something that's very intelligible. And again, that goes back to whether we're talking about creative work or more informational work, and we'll discuss that at some point. And the last topic I wanted to hit on in regards to approaching the show before you actually build the content and create the content is not necessarily just the script, but the approach to building the script. So this is another self-assessment that I can't answer for you. You need to be very self-aware of your abilities and your talents at this point. So we've seen it all over the place that once you break through and start to create content, you're going to improve. It's just natural. You're going to become more comfortable. And so a lot of these things that you're going to have to rely on early in the process, you're not going to have to rely on 50 videos or podcasts into it. So, but you need to be honest with your abilities and skills right now. So do you need a script? Marty has mentioned this many times. Maybe it doesn't always come off the best, but I never have a script. So I have 1,600 videos on YouTube dealing with college football, and I just get on and talk. Now, I just don't click record and start rambling. I have conceptually an idea of I'm going to hit points A, B, C, and D, and I come up with hopefully an opening line that's kind of a hook that hooks people and brings them in. So you got to be self-aware of your ability to communicate at this point, and you're going to get better as you iterate and develop your skills. But do you need a script, or do you need note cards? So I was coaching somebody just a couple months ago on some presentations to a live audience, and this person was locked in on their note cards. And this was a fairly new experience to them. So I knew that I couldn't take them directly from note cards to no note cards. But I told them, what's going to be remembered from this presentation is the first thing out of your mouth and the last thing out of your mouth. So what you need to do is you need to take that first note card and you need to memorize that baby like you know it, you believe it, you're convicted, bam. And you need to get rid of that first note card. And then you grab their attention, and then you go with the note cards if you need them, and this person did at that point. And then you need to know that last point. And then you drop that note card, and you need to drive home the end of your presentation, the climax, drive that home without the note card. So you may need note cards, you may need a full-blown script. You're just going to have to kind of self-assess your ability at that point. Do you have complicated information that you need to convey? A lot of information, a lot of facts and stats. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to stats. For some reason, there are a lot of things I forget throughout life, like where my keys are. But tell me the score of a game from 18 years ago, and it's there forever. So can you retain that? Or is it a personality-driven content that you're trying to get across? And obviously, if it's more opinionated, if it's more personality-driven, it's going to be a lot more of a loose presentation. You still want to be structured. You don't want to ramble forever, but you want it to be poignant. You want it to be direct. You want it to be concise still. But obviously, there's a lot more play for it being free-flowing. You also want to have a logical progression to your content, and you want to drive home points. You just don't want to end it kind of free-flowing again. I had an interview just this week, and there was a lot of good discussion there, but we didn't really have a point, and I was really unfamiliar with a specific incident, so I couldn't speak to it. I had to kind of take that example and apply it to other examples that I knew to kind of wrap this segment up in some kind of logical way and drive home a point. But I was unfamiliar with this person's the incident that they were dealing with, and that was the topic of the entire segment. So you want to have a logical progression to your delivery and your content, driving home a certain point. So that's pretty much where I'm at in regards to getting to a place where you can at least start the content. So I would suggest going through those steps to building to the point that you are ready to produce a segment or a podcast.
Yeah, I know there was a comment in the comments here. Someone said Jim Waxman said, if not a script, at least bullet points, which I could not agree more with that. And I think you said also have your opening point and your closing point kind of rehearsed and ready to go, and then certainly use the cards as kind of reminders or ticklers as far as what points you want to cover. And I thought the point you brought up is that you don't use a script, and I want to clarify for everybody. I mean, you've done this professionally, so you've actually been a sports anchor, been a news anchor on local television, so you're used to kind of flying by the seat of your pants in some respects, and you can certainly read the teleprompter, but you're also used to going off script when needed, and you have the skill level and the talent to be able to do that. So I want to make clear for everyone, I think it's important to have at least an idea, a plan where you want to go, but I think also not having everything typed out. A lot of people I don't think can really read a teleprompter. That takes a lot of skill as well, doesn't it, Mark?
Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah, that's definitely something that I first was asked to do in college. And at first glance, it seems as though, well, if you can read, then you can read a teleprompter. But obviously, you want to be convincing in your delivery, and you don't want it to look like you're reading. So there are a lot of techniques in regards to your eye motion, your head motion, the movement of your body that you can, and the distance at which the camera is away from the desk is key to it as well. You don't want the camera to be too close to the desk. But yeah, the reading of the teleprompter is an art. Yes, it is.
Absolutely. I'm going to go to a couple of these questions here in the sidebar. I think this was answered before. What does BTS stand for? That stands for behind the scenes. That's our cute little title for this series of shows. And it's funny, I'll tell you a story. I mean, when I wanted to get the URL behind the scenes, but I kind of figured that would be tough to get. That's a pretty popular series of words. And obviously it was out of my reach. So I said, well, let me add behind the scenes live. And I was fortunate enough to get a couple of URLs for that. And BTS is just a way to shorten that for either a hashtag or for a podcast or whatever. We're just starting this up, so I want to kind of cover all my bases to come up with something we can brand and we can do on a regular basis. And I want to thank Eileen for posting that link. Here's the link for the Blab Test Zone. So as we were mentioning in my comments earlier about technical rehearsals, and if you're doing on Blab, Blab is completely public, and there's really no way to do something behind the scenes or something off camera like you can with other services. So Blab has set up a special tag called Test Zone so that you can start a Blab and you can tag a Test Zone, and it doesn't get sent out to all your followers. And I don't believe it gets sent to the homepage. So it just kind of makes it more discreet, and you can test things. I know a lot of people run software and run their mics. I have it seems like 80 different mics connected here. And the way that the Chrome browser works, I use Chrome primarily for this. I know Firefox works, but it's a setting in the browser. And lots of times what will happen is it'll get reset. And I'm not sure if you've seen this, Mark, and I'm sure people on this Blab have seen it, where people will pop in to Blabs and their mic's not working. And that's primarily because it's not set up, and it defaults back to whatever the default was. And a lot of people use external mics like this or what Mark's using. And so you want to make sure that's connected and test in advance. And I know with at least Chrome, it's not hot switchable. So if you come into a Blab and it's not set properly, you cannot set it. And while you're still in there, you have to exit the Blab, redo your settings, and then refresh and come back in. So it's a little cumbersome. So if you do it ahead of time, that'll eliminate that. Robin, and I want to welcome Robin. We know Robin very well. Robin, thanks for coming in. And yes, absolutely refresh your browser. Anna asked, let me see if I can get in here, where's the co-host? And I know that was from before. And I know Misty answered that question. So I was running graphics for Mark. And that's something that we're going to be doing more and more of. And we're going to show some advanced production techniques as we go. And my goal is to set Mark. Now, Mark's an on-camera guy. He's not a production guy. So I've worked with Mark, and Mark's worked with me. Mark's taught me a lot of about being on camera. So we teach each other, which is great. So my goal with Mark is to get him set up with like screen sharing, and I've got some ideas for him that won't cost him any money, and so he can show his own graphics. And we're going to get him to be a production pro in no time. And then he's doing the same with me. He coaches me and helps me present myself better. So it works pretty well. So I was the co-host. In that instance, I was just showing some graphics. In fact, I can show that now, where I can actually go and put myself in a little tiny box and show graphics, which is kind of cool. Now I have a very expensive switcher, and because I do this as my job. But we'll get into future weeks. We can get kind of geeky and show you guys some cool things that you guys can use, either low cost or free, that can do similar things that I'm doing right now. Make sure I hit these questions here. I don't know why it's not coming up here. I have no idea. Let me X out. Let's see if I can see. How do I get rid of these questions? It's not scrolling. For some reason, it's not. I can't get the Barb Tomlin's question for some reason. Do you have a business? And let's see. I think that's your question, Barb. And I'm sorry I can't put it up on the screen for some reason. It's not scrolling for me. But she asked, "Do you have a business mission with your live casting here?" And I think both of us have an answer for this. For me, since I do the production as a business, I know a couple things. I know through trial and error, I've learned a lot. And I know people on Blab, there's a lot of beginners here that are just getting started. And again, it's a great platform because it's fairly easy to get started, but we figure we can certainly share some of our knowledge to help you guys out and make that connection. That's really our motive. I mean, what I want to do is I did get the domains. I'm going to set up a small website. We'll do some show notes in future weeks. I'd like to get some downloadable PDFs for you guys. I know people have been asking like for a checklist, pre-production checklist. I'm going to be putting that together as soon as I get some time. And I know Mark's schedule is hectic, but what's great about Blab is we can hop on here, we can share our knowledge quickly, and go from there. Mark, I'm not sure if you have similar reasoning or why you decided to take this journey. I know I approached you about this, and so I don't know what your reasoning is as well, if it's similar.
Well, I think it's easy for a lot of people, and it was for me, to kind of get caught up in your own thoughts and ambitions and in next steps in your career. And Marty's enlightened me to, okay, not looking back at the last, I don't know that I want to say how many years of broadcasting, and like Marty said off the top, being in production rooms, working in production operations now in management for the last 14 years for a major network. And even before that, 9 years in front of the camera in all sorts of crazy environments, crazy situations, reporting from Final Fours and NCAA tournaments and bowl games and national championship games, and encountering just about anything you can imagine, both in news and in sports, in front of the camera, but also having to go through the process of building the shows, building the graphics, and producing and stacking the shows, and having that knowledge from behind the camera, in which Marty is expert in. I'm aware of, I understand, I know what needs to be done. I've been around it, having then taken the experience that I have in front of the camera and in the preparation for being in front of the camera. Marty's kind of stopped me in my tracks in a sense. This hasn't been his intent, but what can I offer to people based on my 23 years of experience in television and radio on a number of different levels and platforms, talking from local television in a number of markets to now network television, international television at ESPN in production operations management, and what we've learned and had to coach people in there. And now taking this on this platform, I think is really exciting. So I'm fully on board, and Marty, I think, has a great idea here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, I know you mentioned you have 23 years of experience. I was at ESPN. Mark, I know your day job is ESPN. I worked with Mark for 14 of those years at ESPN. I left about a year and a half ago. Both worked in the production area in management. So So we got a lot of we've seen a lot. We've got a lot of experience. But we certainly don't know everything, but we have done some things. But don't confuse. We do it on a fairly. We try to strive to do it on a very, very high level. But we understand also that there are plenty of people that are just starting, and we just hope to help people get started. And you don't have to get the fanciest equipment to start. There's a lot of free or low cost solutions, and you can build from there. You get started and you kind of build up gradually. The key is just to get started. I mean, we're doing the show. I don't consider myself in any form a professional on camera. I certainly consider Mark a professional, but what this helps me to do is get better at speaking, get better at presenting myself in video, which is very, very important now. That's why Blab is so popular. So doing this helps that, helps me get my ideas across, and with having Mark here, it's especially great because he actually knows what he's doing, so it helps me. And the same thing, we help each other, which is great. And if we can do that and say, well, why don't we just bring it out publicly and share that as we go? I mean, we've been working together for how many years now? I mean, you started on YouTube like 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and Mark started from zero, and he's come so far on the technical end. He had the on-camera talent. He just needed some of the technical help. But again, it's possible. He does all his own stuff. He uploads. He's using fancy cameras and microphones and everything. But that didn't come in the beginning. That happened as a gradual process. And in fact, we're still working on future production enhancements. So the key is to start and to keep working at it. And you want to keep using a sports analogy. You want to keep moving the ball down the field. I'm always willing to help someone if they're moving the ball down the field. If you see some effort. One of the things and I'll go on a little mini rant here. One of the things I see on Blab is I see a lot of people that kind of don't care, about how their production comes across or the quality. And again, I'm not saying you have to get thousands of dollars worth of equipment and all this knowledge and be totally professional. I mean, that's one of the nice things about Blab. It's very real, raw, and authentic. But you could get maybe a inexpensive microphone. We talked about this in previous episode. Audio Technica ATR 2100 dynamic microphone, USB. It's less than right around $50. Plugs in USB. Instantaneously makes your audio 1,000% better without any kind of knowledge. It's plug and play. Things like that. Get a webcam. A simple webcam, Logitech C920. I'm sure you've heard that being tossed around. The webcams in your computers aren't really all that great. Get that single webcam, get some lights. Again, you don't have to get fancy lights, just in a nice brightly lit room and you're there. And I just described this in 15 seconds and to take your production up 1,000% versus what I see people on their laptops looking down, using the mics built in, not using earphones. Now, disclaimer, I'm not using earphones and neither are Mark, but I have special equipment here called the noise gate that shuts off my mic when I'm not talking. So that's why you're not hearing the echo. I also have very fast internet. I also have a dynamic microphone. I have a lot of stuff here that prevents feedback, but not everyone has that. So earphones help because you have latencies. Things like that are very, very important. Now, I know I had a question here before, and I apologize. The question's on my left-hand side. It's not scrolling. Is this scrolling for you, Mark, on the left-hand side?
Yes.
Okay. Can you put Barb's question? Is there other questions in there? Can you just pop them in
so we answered the question Barb had about live casting business mission. Ann asked about the co-host. Friar Wade asked about my mic. I explained that to Friar Wade on the side.
Okay.
Mic issues. And that's the last one I have scrolled on the left side.
Okay. And I think I had one other one from somebody. Forgive me, I forget where it came from because my question's not working.
Asking how you're sharing your screen.
Okay. So for me, I'm using what's called a NewTek TriCaster video switcher. It's a professional line of video switchers. They range from, I got a lower end one they just came out with this product called TriCaster Mini. Starts at $6,000. So it's out of reach for, I think, for probably a lot of people, and that's the beginning price, and they go all the way up to 50, 60,000 for large scale installations. But what I like about it, it's basically a very specialized Windows-based computer with very specialized capture cards, video capture cards, and specialized integrated software that allows me to do switching. And in future weeks, I'm going to actually set up my green screen and do some fancy stuff for you. I can do virtual sets. I can do all kinds of mixing. I can do what's called mix effects, which is something, I'm going to switch to it here, which allows me to put myself in a small box and put myself over an overlay, and I can move this box around. I'll demonstrate that here. Let me see if I can do that. So if I see, I can move myself around. I can resize myself like this, things like that. And that's kind of a fancy equipment. Now, there are other things that you can get. In fact, let me get out of here. There we go. There are other things you can get that are free, that run on your computer, depending on the computer type you have. We can certainly get into that in different weeks. But it runs the gamut. And again, the advantage of what I have is I have a separate basically separate machine to do all this stuff. And my computer that's running the blab is just running the blab. So normally I'm not going to get knocked off the air. And I think the mistake that a lot of people make is they try to run too many things on their computer. And if you don't have a powerful enough computer with the right processor, the amount of, and proper amount of RAM, you're going to run into issues. You'll run into frame rate issues and things like that. But again, I think that's for probably another show. Let me make sure, and I wish my questions worked. Well, I have a TriCaster and Livestream HD 500. That's cool. What TriCast? I'd be interested in what TriCaster you have. I have the Mini, the HDMI Mini. Are you using XSplit or Manicam? I'm not using either. I have a Mac. I do have Cam Twist installed on my Mac. In fact, I got to introduce that to Mark. That's going to be my plan with Mark, is get him installed with some of this software that's out there, so he can do some screen sharing as well. But either, in fact, if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably choose XSplit. I think it's a better program. But that's certainly a program that you can check out. I'm not sure. I think there's a free version and a paid version. I'm not sure. I don't use it, but I know plenty of people that do. I'm just looking at the comments here. If anybody has any questions, we're just we got another few minutes here, so we can take questions. Let's see. I remember when mixing table in the control room was as big as a coffee table. Yes, I certainly do. You see that at ESPN. They still have the huge mixing boards, yeah. Right?
Yep.
And the huge Grass Valley switchers.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure if they use. I know I think they might be using Sony now. I'm not sure what they're using, but I know they've used Grass Valley and DC1 for their switchers. But they got tons of MEs, mix effects banks. I have 4 mix effects banks, and that I can use. And the shot right here is a shot I can. This is basically a pre-composed shot that I can go to. So I can add a camera, I can add a title, and I can just switch off and multiple elements without having to switch it manually. So basically, you're setting that up in advance. And these big switchers have, you can get a TriCaster with 8 banks, 8 mix effects banks. I have 4 on this one, and I can do 2 sources and a key. And then all the other ones that you can do 4 sources and 4 keys and all kind. It gets crazy. TriCaster. See, Jeff Adams knows, and Jeff's a professional broadcaster and streamer. He uses a TriCaster as well. So he definitely knows that. And again, we can get into that in future weeks if you guys want. But we'll try to keep it on the beginner side, And maybe Mark, what we'll do is we'll do like a little like technical tutorial, I guess. Maybe we'll get you set up live. Who knows? I'm gonna let Barbara in here. Barbara Tomlin. We got a guest coming in. Hey, Barb. Your mic is not working.
Is it working now?
Yeah, perfect. Yes.
Turn it on.
How you doing? Welcome.
Well, you guys are just blowing my mind as I'm sitting here, and I truly have been praying for talent like you guys to come along. here's the thing. If you're here to make a difference, I want to help you out. And I can tell by looking at you, Marty, you're a baby boomer. Is that true?
Yes. Well, I'll say this:
you're at the younger end of it, but I can tell you.
I'm on the edge. I'm the in betweener between a Gen X and a baby
65,
boomer. I'm like right in between there.
I'm close.
Yeah, Mark's close.
Well, here's the thing. We've got I'm studying. I've been online since the 80s, and I've been studying this thing ever since I came on. And I've got over 100 domains that I need to do something with, and all of them are story-based. And I am also a stage 4 colon cancer survivor, going on I will be celebrating my 5th year of being cancer-free here in April 2016. But when you have a life-changing experience like that, it all gets down to making a difference, trust me. And so
absolutely.
I truly feel that the reason that I'm here today is to make that difference. And I'm actually preparing a course right now for the Udemy platform. You guys would do great over there, putting your programs through there. And,
it's funny you mentioned that, Barb. I mean, that's something it definitely is a goal of mine, and I'm going to bring Mark kicking and screaming because I know he has a ton of information and a ton of skill to share. And we're fortunate. We both have, like, Mark works full time, has a day job with ESPN, and I do this business myself with my wife, a production-based business. And we keep very, very busy. So that's not. Hey, how you doing, Robert? We keep very, very busy. So the challenge for us is trying to find time to actually be able to share this cool stuff, and we do it anyways. And I love talking about it. In fact, whenever I get on Blab, I always search out the Blabs that have all the geeks in it. And a lot of times I'll just hang out and listen and jump in here and there. But yeah, I just love talking about it. And Mark, I kind of dragged him into this because I know he has so much to share, and I don't see a lot of people talking about the on-camera part of it. Plenty of people talk about the gear and all that stuff. That's easy, and that's popular, but not a lot of people talk about the on-camera, and that's what we decided to kind of bring the two together. So
good. Well, I'd like to connect with you and help you with that because I don't think you promoted this thing very heavily today either.
Not yet. No,
it didn't really go very far.
Yeah.
And so it was just because we were connected that I was able to catch you.
Yeah, we're just starting out. And we're trying to, again, the challenge is going to be, we want to make it consistent. So the challenge is trying to find a consistent time to do it, getting on a regular schedule. We kind of just came up with the idea, Mark, and we just kind of went with it.
Yeah, so basically, Barb, Marty and I have been talking about this for a few years. But, and then I know that there were some exchanges this past summer. Marty's like, okay, we really need to do this. And I felt the same way. And we came up with some lists of topics. And I was shocked when Marty asked me and said, come up with like 5 topics you could hit on. I'm going to dance better than Robert. 5 topics that you could hit on in front of the camera. And I started making the list. I made a list of like 50 things. So like Marty is explaining, we're both just hammered to the wall with other work, but we decided last week that we really needed to go ahead and launch this and devote the time and do it. So we decided that last Thursday night, and we just jumped on the air last Friday at noon.
Yeah, Barbara, I literally scheduled the show at midnight the night before.
Wow.
And I know that's not the right way to do it. You're absolutely 100% correct. I mean, and if we can get into a regular schedule, we definitely need to go through the proper promotion channels and make sure the word gets out. But yeah, you're absolutely on point about that.
Well, I'm here to help you.
Thank you.
I really feel like and as far as the Udemy thing goes, I'm getting my course ready to launch, and I can put you in as personalities in my course. And then as you're ready to launch, you don't have to, you can sign up. I can help you. I can guide you there. We can do this together. I'm connected to the top Udemy instructors. They're making 6 figures in there.
Wow.
So,
hey, Mark, you hear that?
So the thing is, it didn't happen by accident.
Yeah.
This whole story didn't, and it's going to make me cry. So let's stay connected. You have, I checked, we're following each other on Twitter. If you want to connect by phone, DM you my phone number, or
Please,
we
and I'll
can do
do
an
the same.
appear-in, or however you guys want to do it.
All right.
But who do you want me to contact first, Marty or Mark?
Maybe contact me because I know Mark is a pretty busy guy. Unless Mark, we can contact both of us. It depends on what you want.
Yes. Contact
Well,
both.
because maybe appear-in would be a good solution to be able to, because that's private.
It's funny, Barb, but you mentioned appearing because I was discussing this with Mark as far as we kind of need a green room for the blabs, and I know a lot of people use appearing, and I got to introduce Mark to that. That's a great service.
That's what's in my course.
There you go.
But we can work on that.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks,
I really
Barb.
appreciate your time
I
and
really appreciate
value the
Thanks for
connection.
receiving, Barb. Thank you.
Hey, Barb, thanks a lot for stopping in. I really appreciate you stopping by and offering that. That's fantastic. And Mark, Barb brings up a really good suggestion. In fact, you know what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just going to stop the recording, and I'm going to go to my I don't see. Of course, I don't have my graphic, but anyways, guys, this has been Behind the Scenes Live, episode 1, BTS Live, and we will be back and see you guys next